Hello and welcome to The Box. My name is Jeremy Robinson with Cardboard Spaceship, and today we're discussing the role of AI in the investor relations industry and how professionals should be approaching this technology with their clients. I am super excited about today's guest. He's one of the industry's foremost leading voices in the AI analytics space and currently heads up analytics for one of the top-ranked consultancies in the world. My guest today is none other than Sparky Zivven. He's the Senior Managing Director and the Global Head of Teneo Research, where his team utilizes the most advanced AI-driven analytics to shape critical strategies for their firms and clients. Sparky, I'm really excited about this. Welcome to the show. I'm ready to dive in today's topic with you.
Well, thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I was really interested when I first met you. I met you last year at the NERI annual conference. You actually have advanced degrees in AI analytics from MIT, correct?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to get a little bit of a pause between joining Teneo, and I got an opportunity to take some classes up at MIT. This was probably about 5 or 6 years ago now, and yeah, it was around it was around AI for business strategy and thinking about how AI can actually be implemented. So less about how to build these systems and more about how to get real value out of these systems.
Before you were advising, Fortune 500 CEOs on AI, you were in a lab at the National Institute of Health studying how brains turn ideas into memories.
Yeah, I didn't think there would be a straight line from that part of my career to where I am today, but actually understanding how the brain works and how it takes information, how it turns that into knowledge and ideas is weirdly applicable to the world of AI and how AI, these large language models function. I mean, they're called neural networks for a reason, but really understanding the way that information gets processed, gets transformed and turned into knowledge. Yeah, it's going from neurons to, electrons, but it's basically the same kind of idea.
When you and I chatted at the at NERI, we were talking about how AI has been, how it's evolved from its initial concept just a few years ago to what it currently is now. And I was referring to when I was at Ashford and heading up the investor relations there, we would use like a Python coding to review the quarterly earnings scripting to kind of give predictive analytics and how the CEO's cadence was and how it might be received or perceived negatively or positively. And you were telling me about some of the AI technologies that are out now that actually kind of shape how the C-suite is preparing for their quarterly earnings. So, tell me, in your position at Teneo, what are some of the largest topics that you see now that are being addressed, and what are you implementing at Teneo to serve your clients best in their preparation for investor days and quarterly earnings?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, the buy side, the sell side have been using kind of narrow algorithmic AI now for a very long time, really well over a decade, to piece through all of this content and find that hidden signal in so much of the noise that is coming out from companies. And for a long time, I would say that the buy side, the sell side had a fundamental advantage. It was an unlevel playing field. They were seeing things in these communications that companies didn't even realize were there. And, over the last few years, companies have really started to catch up. They've really figured out, oh, hey, actually, all of this technology that's available to the buy side, to the sell side, I can bring that on board and I can use that too. And that's been, I will be honest, a bit of a blessing and a curse. There was a really interesting study put out by Bank of America just a couple of months ago that found that the overall average sentiment, so just using that same kind of algorithmic AI to judge the tone and sentiment of language, is at an all-time high on earnings calls. But outlook and consensus is trending down and is actually trending down pretty dramatically. And so what we're starting to see is as companies figure out, hey, I can crack this code, I can use these same kind of sentiment analysis tools to craft my message and optimize my language. It's not necessarily a good reflection of this underlying strength of the business. And we're starting to see this divergence between what companies are saying and what their balance sheet says. And that risks a real problem for companies that these executives may end up losing their authenticity, lose their credibility with the market. If their tone says one thing because it's been optimized for AI and the underlying numbers say something completely different. And so that's one of the big challenges that we're helping our clients navigate is how do we know and how do we manage through this knowledge that AI is probably our biggest audience. We have to care about what AI is hearing on these calls. The very first piece of coverage written about our earnings is going to be written by an AI. You know, almost all of our analysts are using AI as a first pass through their analyst notes. Knowing that every retail investor who's out there trying to do some fundamental research about my company, chances are pretty good the first thing they're going to see when they go and Google anything about my company is an AI generated summary. So, how do we speak to the AI in a way that it will understand while preserving the authenticity and credibility of our executive or human audience? Our big focus is trying to get that sweet spot between a message that will land equally well with a human listener and a machine listener. And that's not always easy. It wasn't too long ago that really all that AI was able to do was to read through a transcript of an earnings call, pick out, okay, what are the words that sound positive, the words that sound negative, find those spots where an executive might be, I don't know, get lost in their words, might lose their focus. You get a sense that maybe they're trying to fill the gaps of something they don't really feel confident about. That was the state of the art, maybe as much as 3 years ago. Now, what we're starting to see is far more advanced AI systems, things that look at vocal tone. So actually actively listening live on a call to find those micro tremors in how an executive is speaking, or maybe a tiny facial tick that might be a tell that there's some concern, some uncertainty. Uh, all of that is really pretty advanced, and it relies on the same kinds of AI that's used for, for example, intelligence agency interrogation sessions. Those are being arrayed against executives on earnings calls live in real time. Uh, you also have the ability now through more generative tools to prepare much, much better for these calls. So, one of the things that we help our clients do is build generative agents, so custom trained AIs that are taught to think and act and talk like each individual analyst who's going to be on that call. So we have an opportunity to prep. We can run through with our executives, and these AIs can listen in on that prep session. They can simulate the questions that are going to be asked during Q&A. They can even simulate the kinds of coverage that's going to come in after the call based on what our executives are saying and how they're saying it. So it's a way for us to make sure that we can use AI to better understand the humans as well.
Now, are these developments that are specifically to Teneo, or is this a general AI service that's available to any IRO that's out there in the market now? I'm assuming it's the latter.
So there are a few out there that are public. So that facial emotion coding technology that's out there, that's something that anyone can grab. In fact, we see a lot of folks on the sell side using that, and the buy side using that to understand, really what's going on, trying to squeeze just that little differential alpha out of these calls by finding those hidden signals that others are missing right now. Because tone and sentiment and language complexity becomes so easy to do off the shelf, people trying to use AI to find those little hidden messages have to work a lot harder and have to rely on a lot of different kinds of technologies to do it. That simulation work is something that's pretty unique to us. It's something that we've been doing now for, I would say, about a year and a half now, really trying to get a sense of how can we use these new generative capabilities to better prepare, to simulate the world in a better way, to look around those corners, be far more front-footed instead of trying to guess what the reaction is going to be.
And is this something that you're training all of your personnel there at Teneo, all of the investor relations that are representing clients? Is this something that they're being trained on to incorporate into their daily advisory service role?
It is, and it goes beyond IR. I mean, IR was where we started a lot of this work because it is such a well-structured and organized environment. The data is really well organized. You have a really clear barometer of what works and what doesn't. The share price is pretty easy to measure. So that's where a lot of this has been. This is started in IR as our test bed, but it has since now evolved out into how we help our clients through any kind of crisis, whether it's a congressional testimony they have to give or whether it's an interview with the Wall Street Journal. It's an opportunity for us to build these models to simulate real world stakeholders across a whole range of different client scenarios.
Interesting. You say that AI, we're now pitching to, or, giving the message to AI now. How how involved do you think the buy side and sell side analysts on the street are utilizing that level of AI? I mean, it's one thing to be able to dive into the financials and kind of understand forward guidance and then make your own decision as to whether or not you feel the management team is competent enough to be able to achieve that. It's another thing to dive in and really understand how to utilize AI during that and then kind of, I don't want to say blindly trust it, but there's a level of trust that you have to have in the AI module that you're using, but still then you've got to go back and utilize that. Two questions coming from this rant is, one, how involved do you think the analysts are really using that? And then secondly, how about the quantitative type modeling where you've got passive investors, these massive funds that are, making their trades, based on certain, fundamental, uh, you know, analysis or technical analysis, I guess I should say. Um, how involved do you think the analysts are? And then what role does AI play for these big funds that are making passive trades?
I mean, a lot of these funds have been able to invest pretty early in developing their own proprietary AI tools to do this work. And so they've had the ability to tweak those and optimize those for their thesis. So I think it plays a pretty significant role. There's still, though, that irreplaceable role of the human in the loop for all of this. There are certainly some funds that are going to go and lean in really heavily on the AI side of things and go fully automated. And you've got robo analysts out there that can do all this stuff in a fully automated way. But I still don't believe that replaces the role of the human judgment, the human relationships that exist behind all of this. That's the thumb on the scale that ultimately matters, regardless of where the technology goes.
Do you see any regulatory issues coming down the pipeline with the use of AI?
That's a great question. I mean, certainly there is a whole range of different kinds of government regulations coming out from places like the EU, individual states. Those are really more focused on how companies implement AI within the business. From an investing standpoint, I have not seen a whole lot. It has largely been the Wild West in terms of what companies are doing in the IR space, how they communicate to the market, how they prepare their filings. There hasn't been a ton of focus on the regulatory side there. Now, the SEC has gone after companies for AI washing, overstating how much they're working in AI or overstating the AI's impact on their underlying business. But they haven't really been too aggressive on that in recent months. It kind of hit a crescendo about a year ago, and it's kind of gone quiet again since then. Maybe companies got enough of a message from the SEC that they were backing off from that. But if you look at how much AI is playing a role in terms of the narrative, what companies are actually out there talking about, AI is still a huge part of how companies are telling their story, a huge element of what makes their strategy work. So I don't see the prominence of AI as a talking point going away.
There was an interesting discussion that I had the other day with some IROs, and the discussion was around how the quarterly earnings press release is being handled. Some are really leaning into AI because of those passive funds that are just scanning the press release and they're looking for very specific numbers that then they trigger and then trade on. Are you seeing any benefit, any change in the direction of how maybe investor relations are using press releases to give the quarterly earnings?
Yeah, a while back we had to really work hard to make sure that all of our content was machine readable. So making sure that if we had charts in there, that there was well established metadata sitting behind it that the machines could read. Now with more generative models that are multimodal, have the ability to inject a whole bunch of information natively. That's kind of gone away, and it's given us the ability to do much more with the press releases. We're able to be a little bit more creative, a little bit more thoughtful, still maintain all of the data and the numbers that need to be in there, but it's given us a freer hand because these models that are reading it are now a little bit more sophisticated. So people are really excited about using AI, but understand that there are some fundamental limitations, data privacy, security. They're not able to implement these tools safely and securely within their own systems, or at least they don't feel like they can. That's starting to change. More and more of these tools are starting to be able to be hosted locally. So you've got a big push for open source AI models that allow companies to bring these tools in-house, host things within their own IT environments. And that really does get you away from, the concern about data sharing or privacy or leaks or someone else training on your proprietary data or leaking MNPI. That's less of a concern now than it was maybe 9 months ago, but I'm not sure companies have really been able to catch up to where that is. They tend to move more slowly. And so, they rely on third parties to do a lot of that work who maybe are a little bit more nimble, able to move faster on this, make those investments in those tools and capabilities that they're not able to do in-house. It just doesn't make sense. Companies are still racing ahead. They're trying to figure out their implementations. Most of the corporate clients that I talk to, they still feel that they're behind the curve. They feel like everybody else in their industry is somehow ahead of them. And they also feel like they are somehow behind the rest of their organization. I hear this a lot from clients that, AI has been a part of their supply chain management. It's been part of their warehouse infrastructure. It's been part of their, go to market predictive modeling for a very long time. And that makes sense. That's always been fairly narrow algorithmic AI that's been really good at that stuff. And it's only been the last, 2 years or so that AI has been a good fit for the more ambiguous, subjective, harder to quantify work that happens in the corporate space. And so they're all not just trying to race against their competitors, they're trying to race against their own organization to catch up to where the rest of the business has been for years.
What are the biggest factors you think will change over the next, 10 to 12 months?
The thing I watch for and I'm most excited about is the implementation of agentic AI. That fundamental shift between basically having an AI that follows your directions to an AI that goes off and can do its own work and come back to you with results. That
Is this similar to, like, the ChatGPT operator?
So yeah, Operator is a great example. Operator is sort of a horizontal agent. It's meant to be able to go and do a whole bunch of stuff. So I actually use Operator pretty much every day. I have an Operator routine set up where it has been instructed to go every morning, read the latest news about AI, find an interesting story that would be relevant to a CEO audience, log into, I gave it my login credentials for LinkedIn. It then goes and drafts a LinkedIn post referencing some interesting story of the day, grabs an image to illustrate it, grabs a link to the source, and then saves that in my LinkedIn profile and sends me a quick email saying, hey, go check your LinkedIn. I've got a draft post waiting for you. So that's a pretty, light touch example of what agentic AI can do. But it's all about building these routines that fully automate a part of my day. And then once we get a little bit more sophisticated, once we get vertical agents that can do very specific tasks very reliably and very well, then it shifts. Then it becomes you managing a swarm of AI agents that are out there independently coordinating their work together. And you are that final overview or that final supervisor of a system of systems.
When I first found, Operator, I was absolutely blown away at what it could do. I know that it's still in its beta phase. I know you're being that your industry is AI. Your prompts are pretty, uh, let's just face it, they're way better than mine are. But I've dived into Operator quite a bit because AI is fully integrated into what we do in the video production industry for investor days. And specifically on the post side, it's crazy what it can do. But diving into the operator, I find that there are a lot of mistakes. I feel the prompting is very clear. I give very detailed. I mean, my prompts are paragraphs long that are very specific, give credential logins. And sometimes operator just doesn't do what I ask it to do. I know that that'll change in the industry, but agentic AI, like you said, that could that could be a complete disruptor in the industry to so many people if they really learn how to utilize and operate that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it has the potential to completely change the way we work. And, if you think about, some of these, large established Western economies, they demand a certain amount of GDP growth per year in order to function. Like they fall apart if they can't continue to grow. But at the same time, you've got declining or flatlining populations in most of these Western nations. How do you square that? How do you continue to grow your economy with a population that's in decline? Well, the answer is you have to do more work with fewer people, and that's where agents can come in. They can actually start to fill that gap in the workforce to allow companies to continue to grow, even if their headcount can't. So it's a fundamental transformation in the way that the economy works. It's really exciting. Um, the other thing that we've found to be incredibly helpful is deep research, and every AI company now has a version of deep research out there that's producing essentially PhD level thesis papers with just minimal input that are incredibly detailed, incredibly valuable, very insightful. They leverage reasoning models and online research tools and the ability to plug in your own data, and it's really incredible what they can put together. It is shifting where we as an organization spend a lot of our time doing work. We're shifting away from data analysis and data gathering to synthesis and insight development. It's allowing us to really level up even our junior staffers who are coming right in out of university. They can now focus their time doing critical thinking, really take a step up in their career much faster. So it's really exciting for folks coming into the business.
What would be the top 5 AI tools that you would suggest, somebody in the investor relations industry at a publicly traded company? What 5 apps would you suggest as a great asset for them to use?
I always start with Perplexity. That's always my go-to. Perplexity is probably my favorite AI tool company capability out there, just because of how fundamentally good it is at its job.
What is
Uh,
it? What is Perplexity for those, in the audience that may not be familiar? What does it do, and why is that a value?
so Perplexity is an AI native search platform. Essentially, it's Google for the AI age. And it has some incredibly useful capabilities, both in just general search, but there's also Perplexity Finance, which it gives you the ability to get a very quick snapshot at a company's earnings, their performance, their drivers, their coverage. It's a really great way for folks, especially in the IR space, to just jump right in. And because there's a free version with no barrier to entry, once you start seeing the value, it's something we recommend strongly. You spring for the paid version. It's not that expensive. And it really is transformative in terms of what you can do in terms of gathering information and getting to insight a little bit faster.
How about some other apps that you think are good?
I am a huge fan of Google's NotebookLM. If you've had a chance to play with that, it is a great way to pull lots of content together and find insights very quickly and collaborate. That's the other really nice benefit of NotebookLM is that it allows you to work together with your teams to essentially have conversations with your data. You can upload anything from your latest 10K to the receipts from your last business trip and start to have real insightful data come back out of that. But obviously, the showstopper with something like Notebook LM is their automated podcasting. Putting folks like us out of business. It The way that it is able to put together, I would say, marginally engaging, but passably human podcast content out of whatever data you wanna upload is really the party trick that makes, Notebook LM so attractive.
And all right, give us a third.
Well, a third, it really does have to be a bit the Swiss Army knife of AI, which is OpenAI's ChatGPT suite. Not so much for the ChatGPT chat interface, which everyone's come to love over the last 2.5, 3 years, but it's all the other things that are starting to be possible within the OpenAI ecosystem. The things that I really appreciate there are, if I mentioned deep research earlier, we use OpenAI's version of that, which is really fantastic. It is just a step change in terms of the sophistication and depth of what AI can deliver for you. But I love OpenAI's Canvas feature as well. As someone who works a lot in writing and writing content, having the ability to essentially invite AI in as an editor in your work, who can make suggestions, help you rewrite content, really put in comments just like you would have a human editor in a Word doc. It really changes your relationship to the AI. It's no longer just a tool that you use, but it becomes a partner in the creative process. And so I find that the Canvas format within OpenAI's platform is really valuable for that use case.
I love that. I was having a conversation at lunch with another investor relations person at a public company. Their company doesn't allow them to use any source of ChatGPT, OpenAI, because it's material non-public information that they'll be, uploading there. I know it, you know it, but can you talk about any of these softwares that may serve the public company with implementing certain firewalls that allow them to have their workspace behind, private non-open source formats?
Yeah, there's a few options for companies that are trying to figure out how to thread that needle. One is you can just pay more for it. So if you're willing to bite the bullet, you can get the corporate enterprise version of some of these tools. Anthropic has them, OpenAI has them, and that gives you certainty that the data is going to be protected. It's SOC 2 compliant, it's double encrypted, it gives you the ability to create your own workspaces, nothing gets shared or trained on. So you can have an environment through these platforms that gives you that level of security that you need. If that's not enough, then you can think about local hosting. You can bring on board a lot of these models. These models are becoming so efficient and so powerful, and even the small versions of them, that you can run and host them even on a laptop. It's not unheard of to run a language model locally on your endpoint. That then gives you full control. Everything stays local on the endpoint. It doesn't even have to go to your cloud environment. And so as you start to have more of these tools and capabilities become lightweight and user portable, a lot of that concern should start to go away, and people should feel really comfortable bringing these tools into their day to day work.
Yeah, I know that that would be a huge benefit to some of these investor relations personnel that their executives are just so concerned about that. Um, are there any closing thoughts, anything that you would like to leave the audience with, from what you do? Any last message on AI, on where you think it's going? Kind of let you have the last closing remarks if you'd like.
Sure. I continue to be a huge optimist about AI. I really do see it leading to real tangible benefits in the work that we're able to do. It makes us more creative. It makes us smarter. It makes us faster. There have been some really great studies that have been done recently that found that when people get access to these tools, they actually enjoy their job more. So I continue to say this is a huge plus for all of us in the IR space, but more broadly in the corporate space. Um, there are some real legitimate concerns. We have to make sure that we're doing this in a compliant way. We have to make sure that we're doing this in a way um, that is authentic, that we're not just letting AI hold the pen. We need to think about AI as a colleague, not as our boss, not as our supervisor. We have to make sure that we continue to be that human in the loop that provides added value and that human nuance, which machines are getting close to, but we're not quite there yet. So we really have to make sure that we're not just optimizing for machines, that we're really trying to strike that balance between who our audiences really are, the machines that listen and the humans that listen.
Well, I'm in full agreement. And man, thank you so much for your time. I really, really, really appreciate it. Love the topic at hand. If anybody would like to reach out to maybe ask any questions, are you open to people reaching out?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, anytime. By all means, shoot me a note, hit me up on LinkedIn, drop me an email. Either of those are great ways to reach me.
Great, great. Well, Sparky, thank you so much for your time. Until next time, keep your message clear, your data tight, and your story human. I'm Jeremy Robinson with Cardboard Spaceship. Thanks for tuning in.